Representative. Mr. Malzahn, can you hear me?
Oh, hello there. I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. So if you can just keep your microphone on mute and we'll call on you if council has any questions for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our special council meeting of Monday, August the 10th. So I'm now calling our special meeting to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting tonight on the territory of the Sooke Nation. And I do need to add a resolution regarding the Ministerial Order 1M92. If I could have that on the screen, please. So this is that council is holding this meeting without members of the public in attendance in accordance with Ministerial Order M192, as council chambers does not have the capacity to safely accommodate the unknown number of public participants wishing to attend, and that council is committed to ensuring openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability through the submission of written comment and the provision of live and recorded broadcasts of the meeting. So I'll look for a motion from council to move that, please. Moved by Councillor Lajeunesse and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 5 is approval of tonight's agenda with the inclusion of the supplementary information on the yellow pages.
I got one email too that I'd like to include in that.
Okay, so Councillor Beddoes has one additional email that he would like to add in addition to these items. I would suggest that he just have to read that at the appropriate time, as I don't have a copy and it hasn't been circulated to council. So, okay, so it wouldn't be added to the agenda. I think he could just read it at the appropriate time. Okay, so you can read it out and just name the individual. Yeah. Okay, so a motion to adopt the meeting agenda as it's presented. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Logans. Just a note that the date on the screen was incorrect. Anyway, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And so our first item up under item 6, public and statutory hearings, is item 6.1, development permit with variance for 2365 Church Road. And at this point, I'm going to vacate the chair and pass it over to our acting mayor, or pardon me, our deputy mayor, Councillor Logans. I have declared a conflict given my father's proximity to the subject property. So Councillor Logans, I just ask, to observe COVID protocol, if you could chair the meeting from your seat, please.
Thank you, Mayor Tait. We will come get you once 6.1 has completed. All right, I believe we are starting 6.1, development permit with variance 2365 Church Road with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our Director of Planning and Development is off this week, moving from Airdrie to the island, so I have the pleasure of presenting the presentation this evening. So the development permit application with variance is at 2365 Church Road, and if it's on the screen now, so right on the corner of Felderhof Road and Church Road. And the applicant is looking for 2 different variances within the application. The first variance is a side lot line adjustment, and it's a requirement of the successful rezoning from residential to P2 or community facility. And because of that, the requirements for the side yard setback have moved to a 6-meter requirement, but the building is 4.37 meters from the side yard setback, which did meet the requirements when it was zoned residential. So that is the first variance that's being asked for in the application. The second variance, of course, is something we've talked about at a number of recent meetings, and that is to vary the parking requirements from the required 6 to 2 units. And there, in the application, there are 3 different sections of the zoning bylaw, section 4.5, 4.6, and 4.8, that would require variances. But really, the first one that is being requested is a variance of the 4.5, which is all of the parking requirements for this application be required on-site. The application is asking for a variance to allow for 2 on-site and 4 off-site. So happy to answer any questions about that at this time. It's on the agenda tonight and was specifically asked to be put back on the agenda for August 10th. And staff were asked to work with the applicant on a number of possibilities. All of those possibilities have been exhausted. And the best solution, or the preferred solution, is the requested variance. We could talk about some on-site parking if that's not the case. So I'll leave it there and answer any questions, or ask the applicant's representative that's online with us to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. McInnes. We do have public input and council consideration to review, but first, does anyone on council have questions for staff about the report? Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I believe in the report it said that, you know, the owner of this daycare will instruct his employees to, you know, to park wherever. How is that enforced in a year's time? What recourse do we have if they all end up parking on Felderhof? Because once the zoning goes through, there's no legal binding that say that they have to go down to Helgeson or over to the witness hall.
Absolutely agree with that. There is no mechanism for us to enforce that, and that's why the application is back in front of council, requesting that council consider the variance from the required 6 to 2.
And I mean, there was also a reference of people carpooling and things like that, and there's no way to enforce that, is there? It's just...
No, it was just a reflection of the owner's cooperation in trying to find solutions to the staffing issue.
Thank you.
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, the question through you to Mr. McInnes. A development permit with variance can have conditions put on it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so some of those conditions might be, now the original staff report back in July of last year stated that a parking variance is supportable as there is ample street parking available on Felderhof and turnaround space via the bulb. Now, it strikes me that clients will not drive right to the end and utilize the bulb for getting in and out of Felderhof, and will likely be using driveways, the nearest available driveway, which is not a good scenario at all. So the question is, could the permit, or one of the conditions be that there be some sort of contractual agreement with clients to insist that they utilize that turnaround, the bulb? Would that be one potential condition on this development permit?
I suppose it could be. The enforcement of that would lay with bylaw enforcement. And it may require some changes to our traffic bylaw to be able to enforce that.
Right, okay. Might the development permit with variance expressly state that staff parking is not to take place on Felderhof? Because over which the owner-operator would have full control.
I think that's getting into a slippery legal question as to then who else can we compel not to park in Felderhof.
All right. Third, I've noted in all of the staff reports to date that we have not seen anything regarding traffic calming strategies. No mention of signage on Church stating any children in area, childcare in area signage. Please obey the speed limits. No discussion of reduction of a speed limit to 30 kilometers per hour in that area. School zones are very effective in slowing traffic, of course. Yeah. Why haven't we invested, or speed humps or bumps or anything that would calm traffic and make it safer in that area?
You're correct, none of those things have been anticipated or suggested to this point. The lowering of the speed limit could be done, again, would require an amendment to our traffic bylaw. The calming measures, speed bumps, could be effective. Anything else, signage, is just for awareness. We would have no ability to enforce. A thing like, caution children ahead.
Councillor St. Pierre?
I was actually going to reiterate a good part of what Councillor Bateman was asking about in terms of traffic calming, because I actually spoke to some of the residents, and it seems like the daycare has more or less highlighted that people are traveling at fair clip up and down Church, and that you got a bit of a blind spot. It's hard to actually see. So they have some valid concerns that seem to be almost independent of the application from the daycare, that it's actually kind of dangerous for anybody. So I was curious about exactly that. I just wanted to mention that that has been highlighted, and I think that a lot of the concerns from residents are from not necessarily the daycare, although they certainly feel that'll exacerbate things, but rather that it's already a little bit dangerous in terms of traffic, and they don't want any more because it's already dangerous. So what we can do about that would be of great interest, I think, to everyone involved. The other question that I had was in terms of just the first variance. When the zoning happened, or the change in zoning happened, that should have been grandfathered, is it not? Or is it just trying to make sure that in the future, if the building burns down, they can actually rebuild it as it is? I'm not really clear on why they need the variance in the first place.
The variance is required as an outcome of the application.
So in order to apply, they have to bring everything into alignment? Is that the idea? Or?
My understanding is without the variance to the 4.7 meters, that the applicant would be required to meet the 6 meter setback that's now in the P2 zoning.
Okay. Please.
If I may, I think your question was, why did they need the rezoning? No?
No, my question is, if, for example, the OCP was to change and zoning was to change, there were structures that were, now residential that were commercial, or the other way around, and they didn't quite meet the zoning requirements, building the setbacks and so on and so forth. You don't actually, every resident or every landowner doesn't have to go and get a variance. They're considered grandfathered. But what that means is that they have to come into alignment if, for example, the building burns down or something else happens. Why is that not the case in this particular case? Why do they need this variance at all?
So the term is legal nonconforming, and I think that the zoning does not deal with that. That is dealt with when an application comes in.
I guess my question is, why is this not legal nonconforming? It's not, obviously.
No, because even if it's legal nonconforming, if it stays as is, it can stay as legal nonconforming. But if there's an application, then the development needs to become conforming at that point.
So the new application for a variance actually set off the need to come into conformity with it. Okay, thank you.
They've applied for a building permit to accommodate the number of children that they have in that daycare, which has now triggered the compliance with all of our bylaws.
And the building bylaw, change of use, would also require that variance to be met.
Thank you, staff. Any questions for the applicant or other questions to staff?
I had a question.
Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, through to the applicant. Now, obviously, you're going to have as many as 28 cars arriving between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., and then another 28 coming for pickup, starting at perhaps 4 o'clock to 6. Being childless, I'm not entirely clear. So I'm wondering, do you have a very clear sense of where your drop-off and pickup area will be on Felderhof? Will it be, yeah.
I think the drop-off and pickup area would be starting at the building, and then it's probably runs about 180 feet along Felderhof. So there are immediately 4 parking spaces right there on Felderhof where the pickup and drop-off is. I did want to make one point of clarification that 3 staff members are all in one family, and so there would be 2 additional staff members hired. And so that was the idea of the carpooling, because this family it does not live near there, so they will be coming to work together. And they are required with a grant that they're applying for, and looks like they might get it from the BC government to maintain that facility for a minimum of 5 years. Does that answer the question?
That does to a degree, and you would ensure that as you state now and for the foreseeable future, would be 3 staff cars. They would not be parking in that pickup and drop-off area.
No, the plan would be they wouldn't.
Right.
There's an attempt to make an arrangement with the witness hall, but because of COVID, nothing's being discussed.
Yeah.
They're not an active, the building is closed down, so they don't really want to discuss that or aren't willing to discuss that at this time. But their staff the owners are willing to have the staff park at a location like that, but the idea is not to have them park on Felderhof.
And to be clear, that 180 feet you refer to, that's on the south side of Felderhof, is that? Yes, south side. And of course, much of that south side is sidewalk. So your pickup and drop-off clients would be edging onto the sidewalk.
Correct.
Correct, okay. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Beddoes?
Through the chair to the applicant, you're saying that the drop-off spot is off Felderhof, but you don't control those spots. That's just parking for the residents of Felderhof. Is that correct? So if there's cars parked there in the morning, where would the drop-off zone be?
So there's an accessible parking space that will be on the existing driveway, and so that would be left open. But you're correct, it is a public street.
And my understanding through the chair again is you have 2 parking spots in front, one of which has to be designated for a handicap spot. Is that correct?
It is an accessible parking space, yes.
Okay, so is there anybody on your staff or that has a handicap sticker to use that spot?
No, there is not.
So I guess with that, it's you're generally looking at 5 parking spots instead of 4, if that's really not a usable one, unless it's for a handicap, and staff wouldn't be able to use that, but it'll have to be for a client, I suspect. Just wondering.
I'm sorry, was that a question?
Yeah, I guess it is a question. If that handicap spot is not usable by staff, then you'd be looking at 5 people parking off-site. Is that correct? For a total of 6 parking spots.
Well, 3 vehicles is what they're looking for parking off-site, yes.
Well, you have to have 1 parking spot for every 5 children, I believe. It doesn't matter where anybody carpools, that's the requirement. So you'd be looking for, in order to meet the the zoning, you would have to have 5 parking spots.
And,
I don't want to
right,
belabor the point.
Correct.
Okay.
The challenge we have here is the arrangement of the property and the size of the property. Putting a parking lot into the property significantly takes away from playground space on the back side, and the front side facing church, well, I wouldn't want to have parking spaces there, I don't think, because church is busy and Felderhof is not a very busy street. At least at this time, it's not. Last time I was there, I was out there for 20 minutes and maybe 2 cars drove by, 3 at max.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, so I've driven by this property and looked at it several times, and I can't help thinking that if you were looking for the worst possible location for this business, that would rank very high on the list. And I apologize to the applicant for having dragged on as long as it has, but I just don't think this is the right location. And I appreciate there's a need for daycare in Sooke, but we need to find better locations because this is not it.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant or to staff?
Am I allowed a third go round?
When I'm the chair, sure. Councillor Bateman, go ahead.
So through you to our applicant, I know when you first came forward, you were looking at as many as 40 childcare spaces, and then you received VHA approval for 28, I believe. And that was through VHA that you got the 28 spaces.
So I'm not sure if that's still standing. I think it might even be a few less than that now. I'm not sure. I believe there will be 6 infant spaces upstairs, and originally I think they were thinking of 12. And downstairs, sorry, I can't be, but I'm thinking it was between 18 and 22 spaces, children, for a variety of reasons, but square footage and the size of the property inside, because I believe they need 6 meters square feet per child on the lower level. And that's difficult to accommodate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's head into public input. Would we like to start with Councillor Lajeunesse, and we can each take a letter. I can do 2 because the second one's kind of short, but.
I was going to get that one.
Okay, to whom it may concern.
Oh, sorry, just a point of order, please name
So Brandy Baybutt. I'm writing in response to the letter I received about the application for development permit with a variance at 2365 Church Road. We're located across the street from this property on Church Road, and I do have some concerns with the proposal. While we support more childcare availability within Sooke, we feel this location has some issues. Firstly, there's nowhere to park on Church Road with a variance to reduce the parking from 6 spots to 2. Where will parents be parking to drop off their children? A facility for 28 children is a fair amount of traffic with pickup and drop off. We're also concerned our driveway will be utilized by parents, increased traffic pulling in and out to drop off and pick up in this area of Church Road, which has poor visibility on both sides due to the hills in each direction, brings concerns of safety. We don't feel this is a safe location to have children coming and going when parking is so limited. We hope you'll consider these issues surrounding the variance. I got the next one too. So from Cora Linda Batten, I have no issue with this property varying parking space for a daycare. Daycare is much needed business in our community.
Thank you. The next letter is from Simon Pulla. Dear Council, I am very concerned that Council will potentially be passing a motion that will have a very tangible and potentially negative impact on the traffic and safety conditions of Felderhof and Church Roads. I have a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 9-year-old who all ride their bikes and play with Nerf guns, etc. very close to this intersection. I am very concerned that the increased traffic on our street without any serious calming measures is going to result in an accident. Access to a safe space for children to play close to home should not be compromised by parking issues. Clearly, this site is the wrong location for what is being proposed. I understand that Council may want to support a family who is trying to start a business, which is amazing, but Council needs to have the integrity to be able to say no to what is clearly a poor development site and plan. I would suggest to Council, if they really want to support this family, the municipality could work with the family to find and help to fund a more suitable and sustainable location that is safe and has long-term viability as a daycare space.
So I'm reading from Phyllis Fisher. I realize there is a need for daycare in Sooke, but this property is not the place. My daughter, Shelley Davis, had occasion to come to the corner of Church and Felderhof, and there was a car parked right at the corner, south side of Felderhof, and another car right opposite this car on the north side of Felderhof. She could not see what was on the road. It could have been a child or an animal. If another car came down Felderhof, one of the vehicles would have to wait for the other to turn. With the addition of 22-plus homes at the end of Felderhof, it is a very busy road. If vehicles are close to the corner, emergency could not access Felderhof Road. As it is, if a fire truck comes down Felderhof, they will have to back down Felderhof to Church Road. Where are people that will use the daycare going to park and turn around? Hopefully not in private driveways. In the winter with ice on the roads, it gets very, very slippery and seldom plowed. Please consider the above. Respectfully, Phyllis Fisher.
Okay, this is from Tracy Ewart. To City Council, there are many concerns related to the development of a child care facility at this location.
Oh, sorry, could you put your mic on? Sorry about that.
Start
I
over?
have to start over.
Oh, my God. This is Tracy Ewart, and it's to Sooke Council. There are many concerns related to the development of childcare facility at this location, which there are many concerns related to development of childcare location, of which I could hope Council has also recognized. Regarding the application for variance, it would significantly limit parking, safe parking and drop-off for the proposed 28 children and staff at this location. 2365 Church Road is located on a corner where the sidewalk at Church Road ends, and they would create a very dangerous situation in an already blind corner. Large trucks often accelerate up this hill despite the reduced speed limit, and which has restricted vision, potentially tragedy would be likely. As a resident of the area, I avoid walking my dog along the stretch due to the unsafe road conditions. Without adequate parking or drop-off space, parents, caregivers will be forced to use neighbors' driveways and property due to the lack of shoulder. This area is already hazardous for the existing residents, and extended street developments on Felderhof and Helgeson to increase volume would only make it worse. I implore Council to deny this application, development and variance for these and myriad of other reasons. This is not the appropriate location for such a facility that requires adequate parking and a high volume traffic access. Thank you for your time, Tracy Ewart.
So this is from Margaret Bailey. Good morning. It has come to my attention that there is a possibility that the owners of the property on the corner of Felderhof and Church Road are going to request that their employees be allowed to park on Helgeson Road, as they do not have enough parking on their property. As a property owner on Helgeson Road, I have a strong objection to this being allowed. I own the first house after you turn right off of Church onto Helgeson. That would make my property the first choice for employees to park in front of, as well as using my driveway as their turnaround at the end of the day. I do not think that this is fair to expect me to instruct visitors to my home to park up the street in front of someone else's home because there's not a spot for them in front of mine. I feel that if the owners of the property want to open up a daycare, then they need to abide by the rules and provide adequate parking for their staff, not use the front of someone else's property as their employee parking lot. Thank you for the considerations and to my concerns. Sincerely, Margaret Bailey.
Thank you, and I believe there's just one more, and then Councillor Beddoes, you have an addition. So I'll read this next letter by Michael Nikes. Wouldn't do that to you. District of Sooke Mayor and Council. This email is written to raise my concerns with the recommendation in front of Council to issue a development permit with variance PLN 01483 for the purpose of developing a community care facility at 2365 Church Road. Number of children. The development permit with variance application is for 28 infant toddler ages 0 to 3 and 3 to 5 child care spaces at the proposed address. According to the information on the BC government's website provided in this letter, a group child care facility with age ranges from birth to 36 months are limited to a maximum group size of 12 children, and the child-to-staff ratio is 1 certified infant toddler educator, 1 certified early childhood educator, and 1 certified early child educator assistant. The website also identifies a group child care facility with age ranges from 30 months to school age, kindergarten, are limited to a maximum group size of 25 children, and the child-to-staff ratio is 1 certified early child educator and 2 certified early child educator assistants. This information is corroborated in the early childhood education report found at the link in the letter. In short, the application for this proposed facility to have 28 infant and toddler age children present seems to contravene the maximum allowable number of children of 25 as per provincial regulations. Child-to-staff ratio. That aside, the capacity and age range of children at this proposed facility would require a minimum of 4 staff members as per the provincial regulations above: 1 certified infant toddler educator, 1 certified early childhood educator, and 2 certified early childhood educator assistants. Based on council decisions during the May 11th, 2020 regular council meeting, district staff identified that there will be 5 staff in total for this site. Then during July 27th, 2020 regular council meeting, the applicant suggested that there would only be 3 staff members required, and because they are related, would intend to carpool to the daycare. The intention of only 3 staff members again seems to contravene the minimum required for 4 certified staff members as per the information on the provincial government website. Also, are these 3 related staff members each certified as per the above mentioned requirements? On-site parking. The district parking requirements for community care facilities is 1 parking stall per every 5 children, meaning that a minimum 6 parking stalls would be required, including 1 accessible larger footprint space. The applicant is proposing to keep 1 standard and 1 accessible parking stall in the former driveway location and requesting a variance to reduce the provided parking stalls from 6 to 2. As shown on site plans, the proposed 1 standard and 1 accessible parking stall being located in the driveway location poses significant safety risks to pedestrians, sideway traffic, as well as cyclists and motor vehicles, road traffic, traveling on Church Road, which is a narrow 2-lane roadway. With the location of this driveway location being at the intersection of Felderhof Road, safety risks are increased for pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicle traffic turning onto or off of Felderhof Road by limiting sight lines. It is important to note that risks are compounded by the fact that this proposed facility is located on a crest of a hill, further reducing sight lines. It is my understanding the requirement for a minimum 6 parking spaces is to accommodate not only the parking needs for staff, but also for parents dropping off and picking up their children at the facility. Approving a variance for only 2 parking stalls would not provide adequate parking abilities for parents on site, which would mean on-street parking would increase tremendously. Increased traffic. This facility is proposed to have up to 28 children present each day. That translates into a potential 28 additional vehicles using both Church Road and now Felderhof Road twice per day. In addition to the above noted safety risks to pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles due to the reducing sightlines and impeding existing sidewalks and roadways, I have significant concerns with the amount of increased traffic this will introduce onto Felderhof Road. Felderhof Road is a cul-de-sac that has a total of 41 homes, 20 of which have occupied secondary suites, which already creates a large amount of traffic congestion. Introducing an additional 28 vehicles twice per day is irresponsible and dangerous. Inappropriate facility location. The community residential CR designation is the area within Sooke in which low to medium density residential growth will occur, along with some associated and appropriately scaled commercial development. An objective to the CR designation is to encourage the creation of childcare facilities in residential areas such as this one. One of the other objectives of the CR designation is to allow limited small-scale commercial development to serve local neighborhood needs, example daycare, corner store, and neighborhood pub. It is important to acknowledge that 1 block south, approximately 250 meters from this address, Totangi Properties owns vacant land specifically zoned and intended for construction of exactly this type of small-scale commercial development. Although Sooke has a need for more community care facilities such as the one proposed at 2365 Church Road, this is a very poor location, and citing the reasons above, I am not in favor of having this development permit with variance approved. And I will pass it over to Councillor Beddoes.
Mic on. Okay, this is from Craig Ferguson. I have submitted a request and had been approved to appear as a delegation on this topic at today's meeting, but this was later retracted based on a technicality below. It's honestly quite a shame. Unfortunately, I did not notice the retraction until now and therefore was not able to submit another letter before the cutoff time today. I would like to bring attention to the following points, all of which I'm sure you are aware. An agreement by applicants to have staff to park off-site is not enforceable in the slightest. An agreement by a nearby church to allow staff to park there could be retracted at any time ad hoc. Pretending for a minute that this child care has 0 staff with 2 parking spots, 1 non-handicap, be remotely enough to support this business. With this being the 4th meeting on the parking variance, Council green-lighted. It's based on a handshake deal and it's not permanent, not enforceable, and almost irrelevant, would be rather suspect. All the best. Craig Ferguson.
Thank you very much. That concludes our public input portion, and we can head into council deliberation. Who would like to go first?
My mic's on.
Go for it, Councillor Beddoes.
Well, just, you know, we've just been through an exercise on Friday about good governance, and one of the main points that I came away with is get as much information as you can before making a decision. If I had this information before me in these last 4 times we've dealt with this, I would not approve the application for zoning. It just, 2 parking spots of one which is a handicap is just not adequate, and it's not fair to have the residents of Felderhof carry the load of those parking spots up and down their street. I'm also greatly concerned about the 28 people that are going down, more than likely going down Felderhof, and as it was stated by, I think, Councillor Bateman, it is very annoying at 6 o'clock in the morning when you have somebody pull in your driveway and the light shine through your bedroom window and then pull out again. That's very disturbing. And Felderhof is a busy little street, and it is very congested at the end. If they expect people to go down to the very end and turn around, that's just not going to happen. 5 spots are needed on Felderhof or Helgeson, and I think you've heard some of the people, and a great number of people have opposed this. I think that today was the first time I saw somebody said it's a good idea, and no reasons why, just put in there. It's just the wrong spot, and I know we approved it in the beginning for zoning for P2, I believe it was, but again, if I'd known that 28 kids, I would I would have not gone for it. So I'm not in favor of granting the variance.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes. I'll pass it over to Councillor Bateman.
Okay, so, you know, I've entered into a bit of an obsessive-compulsive relationship with Felderhof over the last number of weeks, since we did the ribbon cutting at near Poirier School, and I've been dropping by at various times of the day. I've hung out there. I haven't been arrested yet, but it's very interesting. You know, when this proposal came to us back on my birthday, July 22nd, 2019, we were about to get our child care needs report, and everyone knew that we need child care in Sooke. There's no question. This is an application by a qualified daycare provider who has arrived in our community with hopes of setting up a center. They found, you know, there's limited amount of real estate out there. You found a place. You want to provide this wonderful and needed community service here in our child care desert. I think we were overly optimistic as a council last September in granting the rezoning, quote unquote, according to the minutes, in confidence that parking details could be worked out during the DPV process. So just, you know, in having my relationship with Felderhof, I have noted very clearly that there's usually not a single car parked on either side of the road for the first perhaps 50 yards of Felderhof. The first car you see is just past the second basketball net near the vintage Ford, beautiful vintage Ford pickup truck, which is being parked there, I would imagine, apart from show and shine events for many years. It shows up on the Google Street View image, which was taken back in September 2011. Now, this, of course, was before Felderhof became part of Woodland Creek in earnest. There are now, at the end, you know, you see on the street view a nice little dead end, which has now grown into an additional at least 18 homes, as many as 22, as Ms. Fisher told us, along with at least 30 additional cars on the road. While I sat there last Thursday, 3 young boys ran out of their home. I was parked by the parking lot, by the mailboxes, and these must be Mr. Pula's children, I'm guessing. And they ran over and picked blackberries. It was a really wonderful, idyllic scene, small town, beautiful scene. And while I'll be voting against this development permit, I think it's educational to realize that we are in a rapidly evolving community and that these sort of issues are going to be coming up. I would agree with Councillor Lajeunesse, and I've stated previously that it's not a perfect location by any means. The two pieces for me that sent me to the no vote was realizing that as many as 56 cars a day would be added to the traffic volume on Felderhof, that they would very likely not be utilizing the cul-de-sac bulb and would be, in fact, turning into driveways, the nearest available driveway, which would then create a situation of a car backing into traffic, which was exactly why we, staff, denied the 3 spots for staff parking alongside the house. And the other piece, for the first time, I was with Carolyn, my wife, and we were coming from Helgeson up the hill and recognizing just how blind a spot that is to turn left onto Felderhof. And I said, "Oh, don't worry, dear, I've got it handled." And indeed, a car was just coming over that crest as I turned, and there was, so I can see that, so I think I've said it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Councillor St. Pierre.
All right. Well, the writing looks to be on the wall, unfortunately. For me, there's a couple of big questions that we're not really looking at here, and that's, for example, the doubling of our population, or the very nearly doubling of our population in the next, by 2038, according to the CRD growth strategy. Where are we going to put all those people? We're looking at more traffic regardless unless we actually build the Sooke that all of our documents and all of our decisions lead to. So I count about 5 different documents. The OCP, our Transportation Master Plan, our Strategic Plan, our Childcare Needs Assessment, and our Declared Climate Emergency that point to the need to basically have a denser community with amenities, where we also have a strong, diverse economy, and that's what we need for the future. Now, in the meanwhile, the transition to the future is not necessarily always comfortable. I don't happen to think that that particular corner is the ideal location. It is, however, a location that is being offered to provide an amenity that we desperately need, that will actually move us in the right direction. We don't have any other, we haven't any other applications, and quite frankly, we have a really terrible track record with daycares right now. If I was a daycare, I would seriously consider not applying if I had to go through this council, because it would not, I'm just saying, not a good track record. This is a business that we do desperately need. I think that the problems that are being brought up here are really real, but have almost nothing to do with the daycare application. They have to do with too much traffic and a blind hill. And that's not a daycare application, and it won't be resolved by denying this variance. This variance is not going to make much difference. Quite frankly, Councillor Bateman, as he pointed out, not much traffic, lots of place to park. All this talk of parking spots, it's mostly just whatever. There's enough room to park. The problem is it's dangerous. The reason it's dangerous is too many cars going too fast. That's going to continue anyway. Meanwhile, we're going to lose the opportunity at a daycare. And we're going to set up a bad precedent, is what I'm saying right now. I would also like to point out, just because I think it's actually quite relevant, there was an article in The Atlantic as far back as 2016, the decline of the driver's license. Young people are not getting driver's license so much anymore. In fact, no one is. According to a new study by a bunch of people, the percentage of people with a driver's license decreased from 2011 to 2014 across all age groups. For people aged 16 to 44, that percentage to be decreasing steadily since 1983. Now what that means is that we're going to have young families that are hopefully going to want to move to Sooke and have amenities close by, because they're not going to have a driver's license. And meanwhile, all the people with driver's license, they're going to end up in electric scooters soon. Okay? We need to build the Sooke that we need for 10 and 20 years from now. And that means having these amenities. It means having them embedded. Ideally, we should have small-scale daycares scattered across all of our neighborhoods so people can park in their own driveways, drop their kids off, pick them up. But we have to move there one step at a time, and this would be the first step. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor St. Pierre. Nothing from you? No problem. Yes, I do have a couple of comments for council. I do tend to agree with Councillor St. Pierre in that the issues that I've seen don't necessarily depend on the variance. So I am in support of it. I reluctantly am, of course, for the same reasons we all are, that it never feels good to sit here and allow less parking, because we're always being asked for more parking. Having said that, I think that the need for childcare has been pretty well discussed in this community and at this council, and that it would be a shame to say no to these applicants. So I do want to support them in that. And I think that regardless of what we do or say, the neighborhood will help them regulate what happens there. So I would urge them to continue speaking with the neighbors to make sure there's strong and positive relationships there. And it seems like, despite the issues that the neighbors bring up, they're not opposed to this or against what's happening in general. Yeah, I think as well, Councillor St. Pierre, your comments about driver's license may likely be in cities, not necessarily remote towns like ours, but at the same time, your point about creating those neighborhoods is very important, and this could be a cornerstone, literally on the corner, a piece of that. While it is not ideal, it does still provide a service that, especially with the development that is happening nearby, will be necessary and more necessary, and could potentially service the children who are living closer to that area. Ideally, that would be the case, of course, and not always 100%, but with the additional homes, hopefully there would be more children who would be local and using that daycare facility. That is all from me. Anyone else have anything to add? Oh, sorry, Mr. McInnes, did you have something you wanted to add as well?
I'll defer to Councillor
Sure.
Bateman.
Councillor Bateman?
So yes, I would agree with you and Councillor Logans and Councillor St. Pierre that we do indeed need to look ahead, identify. We have this OCP review upcoming, and we must identify commercial nodes and take proactive steps to have them developed for 20-minute neighborhoods, i.e. from my door, I can walk and get my loaf of bread and deposit my child at a daycare center and maybe have a drink at a nice local neighborhood pub. The logical spot in the Woodland Creek area is indeed down the hill at the foot of Road Night. This is a C1 property, as Mr. Nikes pointed out in his letter. On the east side of Church, Blair Robertson did approach council back in November 2017 with an application to split zone into a neighborhood commercial zone, and that was defeated as the neighbors rose up as one and made some noise about that. But that remains a C1 zone, and I would hope that the district would be proactive in working with Mr. Robertson, say, and identifying that as a commercial node where, in fact, we could have a great daycare center. And wouldn't it be great for that daycare center for those kids to leave there, walk up the hill to this house up the hill in a nice, neat, orderly fashion, have it as a playhouse for the day, and then return where their parents can pick them up safely at the end of the day and drop them off accordingly. Anyway, I guess the OCP review, this can become, to salvage and reframe this whole process, which has been a little painful. And again, apologies to the applicants. I guess this council's led you on to a degree, and unfortunately, this sticking point has made it impossible. But the lesson to be learned here is that we need to develop great commercial nodes throughout the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. And I would just like to add that that is definitely a logical spot, and I really do support those commercial and neighborhood nodes in our communities. The one point I would like to make is that if we allow businesses such as this to move ahead now, when that lot can be developed, it's a potential that a successful business can now move into a spot like that and would likely be willing to if it doesn't work as well as planned in the original location. Councillor St. Pierre, did you have something to add?
I would certainly agree with that. And I would also like to just point out the mission that we've put forward together in our strategic plan, and I'll point to the last two bullets, or maybe all of them. Maintaining our strong sense of identity. It's always good. Managing our growth for generations to come, and making our local economy diverse and resilient. I think this application does both. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind. That's our strategic plan. That's our mission. Our mission is not necessarily at this point to, in this particular variance, because that's what we're addressing, trying to make sure that the traffic is safer. I would suggest, as we all realize to some degree, the traffic is not going to get safer even if we deny this variance. It's not going to happen. We need to do something further on that account. We also need to make sure that there's just opportunities for people to step out of cars, because people are being terrorized by the cars and they don't want more cars, and I understand. But that means we need to build towards that. Denying this variance does not move us in the right direction. I think having a commercial node, wonderful. We should totally do that. But the more daycares, the better right now, because we have a serious lack.
Thank you. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I just want to just briefly, we had mentioned about, cities of the future and all those things, but we just had a transportation master plan where 75% of the people in Sooke work out of Sooke. And they do that mostly in cars. Some come by the bus, I agree. And if you look at Sooke at any given time, and I know it's not ideal, it is still going to be car-centric for a good number of years. So, I mean, I know we like to look into the future and see this wonderful little green space and everybody's on their bicycles going down to the local store, but that's not the reality of Sooke today. People are rushing around, getting into town, coming back in rush hour, dropping their kids off in a hurry, and I just think this is absolutely the worst spot for a daycare. I'm all for daycares, and like I say, I agree with Councillor Bateman. In the beginning, I think we were sort of all say, wow, another daycare, yeah, we're all for that. But if you can't meet the basic parking requirements, then it's not the right thing. It's not fair to the people of the side streets to house a business's cars all day long. And I just strongly oppose it. So I've had my final word. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes. Councillor Lejeunesse?
Yeah, I would agree with that. The current demographic in Sooke has most people driving, and that's due to a lot of factors. But, and I agree, having lived in a city myself, that it is nice to park your car and walk everywhere. But it's not practical in Sooke, and we are a long way from that. And I think we owe it to the families who would potentially use this business to look after them. And it's not a safe intersection for pulling in and out of. I was there this afternoon, and it took me about a minute and a half before I could pull out, because there's a big line of cars. I don't know where they were going or coming from, but the sight lines are terrible there. It's a small lot, and it's just the wrong location.
Thank you, Councillor Lajeunesse. So we do have some action items on the table here. One is to receive the report for information, and the next is the variance request. Pass it over to Councillor, our CAO, Mr. McInnes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would request that when council considers voting, that you separate the two variances. So side lot setback from the required 6 meters to 4.37. And the second is the request to vary the 6 required parking stalls to 2.
Yes, that sounds good. It's a good point to move forward. Could we have that on the screen, though, so that I can read that out appropriately? I don't see it in the report. Sorry, take your time. Amazing. Thank you so much, Ms. Machada, for working that out for us. So first motion is that council receive the report as information. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Bateman. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. A second is that council authorize a side lot variance from 6 meters to 4.37 meters for the purpose of developing a community care facility at 2365 Church Road. All in favor? Opposed? We have Councillor Beddoes and Councillor Lajeunesse opposed. It carries. And the third is that council authorize a variance to require, oh, did we get a mover and seconder for that? Sorry. We have to go back to that one. Thank you. That council authorize a side, does council understand what happened? I did not get a mover and seconder for that. So this is just for the variance alone. It is not for the parking. The motion is that council authorized a side lot variance from 6 meters to 4.37 meters for the purpose of developing a community care facility at 2365 Church Road. This needs to be moved and seconded. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Councillor opposed? Councillor Beddoes and Councillor Lajeunesse opposed. That carried. And the third motion is that council authorize a variance to require all off-street parking requirements for uses permitted on a lot to be satisfied on the lower lot where the use requiring the space is located, section 4.5, for the purpose of developing a community care facility at 2365 Church Road. Discussion on the motion? Sorry, mover? Okay, thank you. Councillor St. Pierre, seconder? I'll second the motion. Discussion on the motion? We're all...
I have trouble understanding that motion.
Okay, we can clarify. So again, that council authorize a variance to require all off-street parking requirements for uses permitted on a lot to be satisfied on the lot where the use requiring the space is located. All right, questions on the motion? Or Councillor McGuinness for clarification, please. Sorry, darn it.
So the clarity is section 4.5 of the zoning bylaw states that except where otherwise permitted by this bylaw, all off-street parking requirements for uses permitted on a lot must be satisfied on the lot where the use requiring the space is located. So what the variance request is that the 6 required parking spaces on this lot be varied to only require 2 of the 6.
Okay, is that clear? So rather than 6 required, we are at 2 required. That's what's being stated by this motion. Any discussion on the motion? It's been moved and seconded. Councillor St. Pierre for discussion.
Nobody for discussion. Just one last comment. I'd just like to remind everybody that the applicants have spent a fair amount of money and time. And there's 5 jobs on the line and spaces for people to get their kids to daycare. So not likely to change anything at this point, but just keep it in mind.
Any further? Oh,
So
Ms.
can I
Machado?
just suggest that we amend the wording so that it's more clear that the reduction is from 6 to 2?
Absolutely, and thank you for catching that and for putting this together for us. So we will need an amendment. Councillor St. Pierre, you're happy with that? As am I, thank you. So the amended motion is that council authorize a variance to reduce required on-site parking requirements from 6 to 2 per section 4.5 for the purpose of developing a community care facility at 2365 Church Road. So we'll have to have vote on the amendment. So for the proper wording, which we will want to support so that we can get the proper wording for the next motion, okay? All in favor?
Move we accept the amendment. Do you need a motion for that?
It's been moved and seconded. We have accepted the amendment as mover and seconder of the original motion. And
So what are we voting on now?
we are voting on the amendment. So we're voting to amend the original motion. After that, we will have a vote to either pass or fail that motion. Yes, I know you wanted clarification on that. Of course. So voting to amend the original motion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Now on the motion that council authorize a variance to reduce required on-site parking requirements from 6 to 2 per section 4.5 for the purpose of developing a community care facility at 2365 Church Road. Need a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre. I will second the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Beddoes, Bateman, and Lajeunesse opposed. The motion fails. Thank you.
I would like to ask the applicant if he is amenable to considering a proposal that would allow for the required on-site parking, or is that something that the applicant is not willing to consider?
I believe the applicants, well, I'll speak with the owners, but I do think we will consider that. I know that they're also considering reducing the size of this facility, which would be significantly less than 28. But we'll consider it. I can't, or we'll sell the property.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair, with your blessing, I would like to talk a little bit about the application process so far and how we've ended up where we've ended up. And if I can ask Ms. Machada to put slide 7 of the slide deck back on the screen. So if you will recall, when this application came forward, council was advised that through the internal application process, it went to engineering, and engineering cited section 4.6D of the zoning bylaw as to why the on-site parking was not something that should be considered. And that states, D states that off-site parking spaces shall be arranged so that, so to require the backing out of vehicles onto a highway other than for single-family residential or duplex dwellings. This provision does not apply to lanes. So that provision states that, you can go to the next slide, please. The red area on Felderhof, this section of the bylaw would not allow for nose-in parking there because it would require the cars to back out. And because it's not a single-family residential or duplex, it's not permitted in the bylaw. Potentially, and we did have this discussion internally today with engineering, is that if there was a requirement for those 4 stalls to be used back in, it would meet the requirements of the bylaw. The one thing that I think still would require a variance is 4.6M, which would states that in a situation like this, that the parking stalls could not be any closer than 3 meters from the property line. This would push these parking stalls even further back into the stall or into the property and taking up again more space. But there is an option, and we are dealing with the variance here. I know that council has talked about a lot of different issues around this application today, but the application subsequent to the rezoning is dealing just with the variance. So I'm wondering if council would consider or the on-site parking with the variance to vary the 3-meter requirement from the property line.
Would you like us to consider that today or at a future council meeting?
This is just in the spirit of providing full information for council to make an informed decision. So I will rely on council's wisdom to determine whether they want to explore this evening or table it to a subsequent meeting.
Thank you, Mr. McInnes. I think personally that would be appealing. I know that that was something that when it was presented to council, I was in favor of and was confused about the conflicts of the vehicle conflict and sidewalk conflict and how come we couldn't reduce those conflict areas at that time. So that would certainly be something I'm interested in seeing move ahead. And I'd be curious to know what council is is thinking in this moment and perhaps in the future if this were to come back once more. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of dealing with that tonight. I'd have to go look at the site and see, get better acquainted with what that all impacts. The other thing is that's not on tonight's agenda to do that. So I think in order for people to comment on that even further, the public would have to know that's coming up. They've not had an opportunity to even comment on that part of it. So I think it'd be not in good governance to deal with it tonight.
Thank you. I'll pass it back to Mr. McInnes.
I would suggest that within the report that is on the council agenda and the Schedule A, that 4.5, 4.6, and 4.8 of the zoning bylaw are in that report. And thus, that this is on the agenda this evening, Madam Chair.
Yes, I would support that as well. I want to make sure that we give every possible chance of success to the applicant. That does include our consideration of their timeline as well to begin development soon. I do believe that the information that I would need is present. I have seen parking stalls where it does say nose in only or back in only, and I think that would be sort of what we're looking for here, if I'm correct, as well as the 1.5 meter issue. Is that right?
It's actually 3 meters from property line.
Thank you. Yes. Councillor St. Pierre, you had your hand up?
Yes, I was actually just wondering whether or not the applicant can stand any more delays in terms of actually moving forward with this project at all. Just thought it might be pertinent.
I didn't hear the question.
If you wait, and I don't know when our next meeting is, but I believe it's in September, would that be sufficient time for you to actually do the development of the property and be prepared for business?
Construction was supposed to begin in September, but if it's just a matter of weeks, I think it's probably doable to wait until then. But be stretched out any more than that, if it moved into October, that would be difficult.
Thank you very much.
Other councillors? Councillor Beddoes, go ahead.
Why wasn't this presented before when we're kicking around options and pushing people down to look at Helgeson? We've been dealing with this for a few months now, and then all of a sudden we get to a vote. And the vote is not just about getting the stalls. The vote's also, well, I guess it is just about the stalls because it's just a variance, but just a complete opposition to this. And now we're going down another rabbit hole. And, when's enough's enough? I mean, we dealt with it for 4 meetings now, and then out of the blue comes this. Then if this was presented 2 months ago, I would consider it. But presenting it now is, to me, not good governance. And you could look through yes, it's in there, and no, it's not, or whatever. But the fact is that I would need more time to consider this. And I think it's not good to have it just thrust on us tonight after a vote didn't go a certain way. And I'm quite annoyed by even bringing it up. So that's my position.
No, that's completely understandable. Anything from councillors we have not heard from yet? La Jeunesse?
Yeah, I even with the 4 additional spaces on Felderhof, if we can find a way to make that happen, as I mentioned earlier, just pulling out of Felderhof to turn left onto Church Road can be challenging. So the 2 parking spots off of Church Road, you could not have those to back in because you're stopping on the crest of a hill. If somebody comes over that hill, you're going to have rear end accidents every day because it's not a safe place to pull in and out of.
Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, as I hope I made clear, I voted no to this location effectively, given that we don't know how many cars now will be visiting this childcare. Let's lower it down to 18. So 18 cars doing exactly what we've indicated with the subject property we don't want to see, which is cars driving into driveways, backing out, and therefore becoming a hazard. So I think we could possibly move forward with this tonight, given that I don't think my view and opinion will change on this. And yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. We do have to remember it is now zoned for this use. So the issue on the table is in fact the parking spaces. Perhaps, Mr. McInnes, can you clarify tonight if the options for the applicant as we have discussed per the agenda, with the motion being failed, the applicant can now move forward as long as they have 6 spaces. Is that correct?
As long as they meet all of the requirements of the zoning bylaw. So 4.6D deals with the backing in, backing out. So that requirement would have to be met as well. So I think that if council's not willing to consider any further variances for parking, I'm confident in suggesting that then the application is dead.
Right, so to confirm, application dead versus the variance, which would be to vary the requirement to back in and back out. So with council, if council is opposed to backing in, backing out, then that's where it ends?
Yeah, I think the more pertinent question is the variance for the 3-meter setback from property line.
But both would have to be in place?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor St. Pierre, did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
Through your chair to staff. I'm just curious, if the applicant was to reduce the numbers in the daycare so that the ratio of 1 to 5 required 5 parking spaces, would they still need the setback, and is that an option?
Certainly is an option. They still would need the variance for the 3-meter setback.
Okay. So even if they reduce down to needing 3 spaces on Felderhof, they would still need to change the setback?
Correct, because the bylaw as it is now says that the parking stalls are required to be 3 meters from the setback, or from the property line. So the highway, is it highway or property line? So the idea is, now this is an institutional development, it's not a residential development. So there's a driveway into a parking lot. What would be required here is that the parking stalls would be directly adjacent to the highway.
So the parking stalls would be too close to the highway. It's nothing to do with the other boundaries of the property.
Correct.
Thank you. And actually, sort of, I wanted to confirm something, but I think that Councillor Bayos brought up a good point of, why was this not brought up before? And what's tickling the back of my mind was that the applicants wanted to keep more space for play space for the kids. Is that not the case?
My recollection of the meeting where this came forward was it was referred to through the internal application to engineering, and engineering brought up the 4.6D, which prohibits vehicles backing on to the highway.
Okay, so this was not the preferred solution because of the need for 2 additional variances, and that's why it wasn't brought forward sooner.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Beddoes?
Has the applicant applied for this variance that our CAO was talking about?
I would say in effect, yes, because this is what was brought forward. So our CAO is suggesting the variances we would have to make that parking ask that they had work.
I believe that's a stretch. Again, I would need more time. I'm not in favor of moving this forward.
Any additional thoughts from council? Is this something we would want to look at later with further information, or are we just moving on in the agenda tonight? Councillor St. Pierre and then Beddoes.
This would provide the 6 parking spots with, from what I could tell, well, it provides 6 parking spots. So I guess the question is, do we want to go back to everyone in the neighborhood and see how they feel about it?
And Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, it's losing my train of thought now. I certainly would like more time to deal with this. The other aspect is the applicant, or whoever represented the applicant there, is saying also that there may be some changes. They maybe drop it down to 18, 15, whatever it is. So why don't we keep this in mind, have the applicant have a talk to his people, because he even said he wasn't even sure, and see what they do want to put in there. Because maybe there is a much less requirement than the 28 kids. So I'm not prepared to go through with this until there's more information. I mean, this is a whole new ballgame. We've kicked around these parking spots for 4 meetings now, I believe. And then when we finally make a decision, we get another option thrown at us. And after we're told we've done away with all options, this is it. You either have to put them on Felderhof or the adjacent streets, and that's it. And then all of a sudden we close, and now we have another option. And I'm really, really ticked with that, and I need some time to digest that.
Yeah, no, you bring up a good point, and I think it's actually an opportunity. If we're trying to meet somewhere in the middle, perhaps that additional time is needed, and sometimes these things move slower than we want and slower than the applicant wants, but perhaps that's the time required for us to come to some middle ground. But it does sound like we're not interested. I haven't heard from all of council, but it's getting the vibe that a bit more time and information is needed if the applicant is willing to work with us on that. No resolution required, just kind of making sure we're all sort of on the same page. Yeah, it does seem that way. Okay, I do want to thank you, Mr. McInnes, for bringing this forward, and also thank you to our applicants for sitting through this process, and I hope we can, again, come back with more clarity on your plans and perhaps more clarity on some ways we can make that vehicle and sidewalk conflict work for on-site parking.
Through the chair, I would suggest that we do need a motion asking staff to work with the applicant, because the way this sits right now is that council has not authorized the second variance. So without some motion to still work with the applicant to find still a solution, the way the motion reads right now is it's over.
And I would suggest that council may not want to do that. Council may not want to see this application back in front of them. So 4.5 in the zoning bylaw was not approved tonight. 4.5 is the requirement that all required parking be on-street or on-site parking unless it's varied. That has not been varied at this point in time. So I don't believe that I need a direction from council on whether or not to bring this back. It'll be something that the applicant would have to discuss or ultimately decide. But at this point, the application that's in front of council has not been approved.
Thank you. Any will from council to ensure that we connect with the applicant, or are we happy as is and wanting the applicant to come to us? Councillor St. Pierre?
I'm suspecting the applicant is going to have to go back to the owners of the property and come forward with a new application or whatever the process is, and I think that's might be what's being suggested here. But I don't think that there's any need for council to intervene at this point in time with staff.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on and call Mayor Tait back into the room and move to 6.2.
Good evening, everyone. For the interest of those viewing, we're just taking a bit of a stretch break. Okay, everyone, so thank you very much. We're now on item 6.2, which is the District of Sooke's 2019 Annual Report. So this is a report on all of our activities and accomplishments for 2019. And there was a provincial a ministerial order that enabled us to adopt it in August. Normally, this would have come forward in June, I believe, in previous years. So it's here for... I'll just turn it to staff for anything to present or to add in addition to the report in front of us.
No, Your Worship.
Okay, well, thank you for being very succinct. I do wish to thank staff for all of the work that went into this. I really enjoyed the layout, the photography, you know, the spaces and a lot of the pictures and the like. It was hard to think back on 2019 in the middle of COVID, so I did make a suggestion that we sort of create a COVID page for our 2020 report, because I think that'll be very important as we look back in future years. So typically this has a bit of an annual meeting for public input to comment directly onto the report, so I'll just check in with our corporate officer to provide me with any and all correspondence received.
No correspondence has been received on this item, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll turn it over to councillors for comments. Councillor St. Pierre.
Just a quick comment. I was really impressed with the clarity, the language, the layout. It really lays things out beautifully. Probably one of the better annual reports I've ever seen, just because of how clear everything was. So a beautiful document in terms of letting people know what we've been up to, because sometimes I wonder, but there it is. I now know. It's good.
Excellent. Other comments? Councillor Bateman.
Well, I'll echo that and your comments, Mayor, that it's a really well-designed and assembled document, so kudos to whoever that was. A really lovely tribute to dear Councillor Parkinson. I like the 2019 highlight reel, and then also particularly what's planned for this year and next. That was really great. Minor point, on page 4, there's a reference to artisan shops and a growing industry of microbrews, wines, and spirits. Now, I'm not sure we have a winery here. We have mead, but mead is not defined as a wine. So just that small point for the tipplers in the audience. There you go.
No, that's a nice catch, and I suppose even mead isn't within our own municipal
That's right.
boundaries, so,
Gap industry.
yeah, we'll need to work on that. Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I read the whole thing cover to cover this afternoon and thought, as has already been said, it was very well done, well put together. I did notice one typo, which I didn't make a note of because I thought Councillor Bateman would mention it, so I'm good.
Okay, other comments? Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, it's a good job, well done, and I know there's a lot of staff time went into that, but it's presented nicely, well done.
Okay, other comments? Oh, Councillor Bateman.
Under the 2019 engineering highlights on page 26, it states completion of electric vehicle charger installation. Now, I believe we are awaiting Mr. Butterfield's replacement before that moves ahead. So I don't think we've installed any EV chargers yet as a district.
Noted, thank you.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre?
Turns out I did actually have a question other than, effusive praise. I was curious when I was looking at the planning department, I noticed that there was a significant drop, like less than half in public hearings in 2019. And I don't know if anybody has an answer, but I'm just curious why. And that wasn't the only place where there were drops, but that one was like just, poof, way down. And so, is there?
I don't have that, and unfortunately, Mr. Paolo is not here tonight to comment or to take away and provide input, but I will get that comment to him and via email give some clarity on what he may think contributed to that.
It'd be good to know. Okay. Ms. Machado?
I think if I'm thinking back correctly, when we hired our new head of planning in 2018, they put a large amount of effort into getting the backlog cleared. So that probably drove up the numbers for 2018 versus 2019 was probably more of an average year for public hearings. That would be my suggestion.
And I would like to request a printed copy, if I may. I tend to keep the color ones just to have in the archives, in my personal archive file, please.
Me too.
And one for Councillor Bateman. Ms. Gray?
Sorry, just to clarify Councillor Bateman's question about the EV chargers. I believe, because I questioned the same thing, because I was like, I know we didn't do this, but I believe the intent of that was highlighting just developments that have occurred that they've put in EV chargers, like has happened at Evergreen. So just that we are kind of supporting that and requiring new developments to install EV chargers, or they're offering to do it as part of their development. So I believe that's what the comment was trying to highlight, not so much, the district does have a couple that we've purchased, but we haven't installed those yet. But I believe that comment for 2019 was just about the developments that have put EV chargers in their developments.
Okay, very good. So seeing that we do not have any public input and nothing further from staff, I'll just look for a motion then that council approve the District of Sooke 2019 annual report. Moved by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Anything further?
Just a thanks from myself as well, Your Worship, as council has suggested. A lot of people put some time and effort into this, but especially our corporate services team and our deputy corporate officer were spearheading this, so thanks to them.
Okay, if you could pass on our appreciation, we'd appreciate that. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, and item 7 is report of the Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This being a special council meeting, I did not generate a report for tonight's meeting.
Okay, thank you. Public question and comment period under item 8. This is where we would read out any received correspondence received for this particular agenda, and I'm hearing that none have been received.
Nothing for the regular agenda outside of the development variance permit would have already been read into the record.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Ms. Machada. So item 9 is our consent agenda. So we'll look for a motion to adopt 9.1, 9.2. Councillor Bateman? Moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Any discussion on the consent agenda? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10, reports. 10.1 is the wastewater treatment plant upgrades 2020 tender award. Over to staff, please. No, that's all on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report is fairly self-explanatory. Just because of the timing, and as we spoke about earlier tonight, the desire not to call another special meeting in August, I am requesting that Council consider delegating their authority under Section 3.4 of the purchasing policy for this one tender only to the CAO to award.
Moved by Councillor Bateman, so that council delegate their authority under section 3.4 of the District of Sooke purchasing policy for the awarding of the wastewater treatment plant upgrades 2020 to the Chief Administrative Officer. So that's moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor Logans. Any discussion? So I'll just elaborate that I fully support this. This is a very important piece of equipment, and we have a very specific time window available to get this going. So I think we've had a series of open meetings and reports and dialogue that have led us to this point, and we really need to get on with this significant piece of equipment. So all good. Any other questions, commentary, anything? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you for staff for bringing that forward. Item 11, bylaws, 2020 annual tax sale deferral bylaw. So this is over to our our financial officer, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, through your worship. So as stated in the report, I just want to make council aware of, due to the COVID situation, that being an extraordinary situation, the province has issued another ministerial order that gives council the option to defer the 2020 tax sale that normally occurs on the last Monday of September. So just, and if council chooses to defer the tax sale till 2021, just a bylaw will need to be adopted, 3 readings and adopted at tonight's meeting, because it needs to be adopted by August 31st. So, you know, this is something that occurs every year. Obviously with tax season is there's a number of properties, you know, it usually starts 50, 60 properties at a risk of a tax sale at the beginning of any tax season. And then through the process of sending notices, reminders, then what had just happened recently was a letter went out, you know, signed by myself, just warning these, I think it was 40 properties left by that point, that you're at risk of a tax sale if the 3rd year owing of your taxes have not been paid by X date. So it's kind of a normal occurrence. This year for numbers, we are at, as of today, we are down to 18 properties at a risk of tax sale for a total delinquent value. So that's just like the year 3 value of their taxes of $44,600. There's quite a few property, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these properties have delinquent taxes owing of under $1,000. So most likely, we're fairly confident that those should be collected. The normal process for staff is starting on August 28th. If there's a mortgage on these properties, then staff will start contacting the mortgage holders and let them know this property is at risk of being tax sale, which sometimes then will spur the mortgage company to pay the taxes or work with the owner to get the taxes paid. So this is just, as far as staff are concerned, it's a complex issue because yes, people are struggling because of COVID, but this tax sale issue is from taxes from 3 years ago. And so what will happen is if council adopts this bylaw, Then next year, there will be 2 years' worth of taxes required to get any of these properties out of tax sale. So it doesn't just extend it, it basically just defers this burden until 2021 for some of these properties. As I stated in the report, I've only been here for a couple of years now, so in 2018, we had 2 properties at tax sale. Last year, we didn't have any properties. And again, we started out with these same higher numbers every year. And as far as I know, in our history, we've only had 1 tax sale property that actually didn't get redeemed, because if you're not fully aware, after a tax sale, there's 1 year redemption period before the property would actually transfer ownership. So we've only, in our whole history, apparently only had 1 property that actually didn't get redeemed during that 1 year as well. So this is just presented to council for your consideration. If it's something you would like to do, then our next steps for staff would be to reach out to the people that got the letter initially, these 18 residents that are at risk of tax sale, and just inform them that it's been deferred for 1 year. And then that there would be the requirement to pay the 2 years to get them out of tax sale risk for next year. So this is just presented for your information and consideration, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Gray. Councillor Logans?
Thank you very much. I just need a bit more clarification because I've only been through that tax sale process a little bit, and it's been in the past, so I don't quite recall how it goes. But the properties, do they come back to us? You may be able to answer this, Mayor Tait. That list of properties, if there are any that go to sale, that comes back to us for at another meeting, doesn't it?
I think this is it. This is it for council consideration, because then there's sort of, I'll get staff to answer. I didn't think so, but.
Okay.
Through your worship to Councillor Logans. Normally, no, a tax sale list doesn't come to council every year for your consideration, because it's just a requirement of the legislation to have a tax sale for any properties with 3 years worth of outstanding taxes by the last Monday of September. So these lists don't normally come forward to council. It's just with the exceptional year with COVID, the province has issued this ministerial order that gives council the option. So I just wanted to give you the option to adopt this bylaw if that's council's will to do that. So otherwise, in a normal course of business, if it wasn't COVID, you wouldn't even have heard about this. We would have just gone about our business, and if there was any properties remaining, started advertising the tax sale on September 11th for this year, it would have been, and then having the tax sale on September 28th.
Okay. Yeah, because my one concern is that next year will be more difficult than other years for some people, and it does sound like we do, with that prompt with the banks and the homeowners, get most, if not all, of those taxes in. I also wonder, will we have this option to defer from the province again next year? So I'm kind of looking to council for your thoughts as well before making a decision.
I mean, it's a case where it's just that we don't know. There's just so much uncertainty as to what future years are going to bring. I tend to sense that it's going to be harder because there's still many people that are out of work right now. Even though some have returned to work, it's still a very difficult time for many. So it's hard to know. I just kind of look at it that I've sort of been back and forth. Like, I hear it that these are from previous years, taxes, when there was no COVID, and now we're dealing with COVID. I look at the fact that many scrambled to find a way to get their taxes in by the deadline, or to enter into a deferral program. And then our last meeting, we found an outstanding advocacy item that we've brought to the minister, that will be in the process of bringing to the Minister of Finances. So in that light, I just look at it, this is an option that's available now. If it does alleviate some hardship for some, my sense is that we provide the opportunity to defer this year, because we don't know what next year is going to do, whether the province will then say, you need to, I don't know. I have no idea what they're going to do. But I think maybe we as a municipality or a local government may have different requirements next year that will require different ministerial orders depending on what happens to the rest you know, with the economy and everything. So, you know, I think that there's some people that are just in tough times all around, COVID or not. It's a challenging world out there. So given that this has been made available and that we are able to, you know, the majority of our collection is in, we're able to continue with operations as is, that given that there has been an option available to alleviate some hardship, that we support it for those that may need it. I'm rambling, but that's my sense. Councillor St. Pierre.
I'm just curious if it's possible for basically the notices and the process to continue as it is, and then bring out the deferral as needed. Because it seems to me that it's not actually doing anybody a favor to, especially if they're in a hard position, to make it twice as hard next year. It feels like it'd be almost kinder to say, here's all the tools, go talk to your bank, try and sort this out so that you don't have, you know, a double indemnity the year after. I don't know if we're doing anyone any favors this way. I would love to be able to say, please do everything you can, and oh, well, you know what, you've got this option. We can give you this option. I don't know if that's actually possible, but that would certainly be my preference.
No, and I hear you. It's just, we don't know. Everyone's circumstances are different and difficult. So I think, don't we have to do this by a certain date? I don't know that we can revisit it later.
Correct. If council would like to defer the 2020 tax sale, the bylaw has to be adopted by August 31st. So this is the last meeting to do that at.
Yeah, so it has to be today. Yeah.
And for comparison, like at this time last year, there was 28 properties at risk of tax sale at this time last year, and this year we're down to 18. And as I mentioned, 6 of them are under $1,000. So fairly confident we'll collect on those for sure. And
Go ahead.
So I understand the August 31st deadline for actually, you know, taking advantage of this opportunity from the province. What I'm actually more curious about is, in terms of our own process, do we necessarily have to stop what we're doing in terms of sending out notices to banks, in terms of communicating with the public, or can we just continue with the regular process with the understanding that this is still something we've done, that we can, in fact, defer till next year?
through your worship, so if council adopts this, then a letter has to be sent to all of the people at risk of a tax sale and advising them that the tax sale's been deferred till 2021. So in theory, we would kind of cease calling mortgage companies, et cetera, if any of them had mortgage companies that we could call.
Then I would request in that letter that it be made very clear that they should continue with all efforts so that they don't get nuked to the next year, whatever we can do to encourage that. Thanks.
Okay, other comments? Okay, so what we have in front of us here then is that council give first, second, and third reading to the 2020 annual tax say deferral bylaw number 789, 2020. Moved by Councillor Beddoes and seconded by Councillor Logans. Anything, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And then that council adopt the 2020 annual tax sale deferral bylaw number 789, 2020. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Logans. Anything, anyone? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you very much for your consideration there. New business, I believe there is none. Okay, so item 13, any council verbal reports? Councillor St. Pierre?
So last Thursday and Friday, while we were doing our other work, the Climate Caucus had a summit, which was well attended on a number of different topics, including, actually I can't name them all, but transportation, carbon budgeting, and food security of all things. And I made a presentation on food security, which was well received, and I'm hoping at some point to have a chance to share.
Thank you, Councillor. Other councillors? Councillor Bateman?
Sure. Yeah, I was at the Climate Caucus Summit as well on the Thursday, and there were 120 other elected officials from across Canada participated. And yeah, there was some fascinating material, rapid decarbonization, the municipal natural asset management strategy, which is pretty interesting piece around the valuing of our natural environment trees sequester carbon, creeks provide water drainage systems, and the good news is that Sooke some Sooke staff are getting trained in this at Royal Roads this fall, and our GIS, Mr. Goebel, has been working with Gibson's and the Sunshine Coast on developing some strategies, and that's really useful going into the OCP and land use decisions to ensure we preserve our natural assets. So there was the ribbon cutting for phase 1 of the Dimma Mill Creek pedestrian crossing project. I submitted a final set of recommendations on the draft master plans to the consultants, and I asked for a couple of things which aren't directly our responsibility, but things we need to advocate for with the Ministry of Transportation, i.e. a second vehicle bridge crossing of the Sooke River, and something that's came up on the weekend are these boat trailer parking issues east of the Prestige on the Sooke Road, because it was very crowded. If Councillor McMath was here, she could tell us that catch and release has ended, and now you can reel in a Chinook. So it was really busy there, and I think we need to find a solution again. It's kind of dropped off the radar, but it was a big deal 4 or 5 years ago, and I hope Council can address this in some way. And I think that's all from me. Thanks. Oh, I just wanted to say how good the session with Gordon McIntosh was on Friday, and he's this wizard. He's a master of he got us all on the same page. The mayor will probably speak about this, will you? Well, I wasn't going to. But... Oh, you weren't? Okay, carry on. Keep sucking up the air in the room. Yeah, so we've got some really good clarity on revising the strategic plan, and we also established committee structure going ahead. So that's fantastic, and that was really much appreciation. I think Mr. McIntosh he's the head of the Local Government Leadership Institute, and I think Norm, the CAO, knows him, so we've been very fortunate to have him work with us. The end.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Other updates?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Just an observation, I have heard very, very little in the way of complaints about the homeless things at the old Mulligan's location. So things must be going well, if anybody else got anything other than that. But no, I haven't heard any complaints at all. It's quietened right down.
And when one complaint leaves, another takes its space. But that's okay, because that's local government. Just to add, yes, there is no one camping any longer in our parks. Anything that was left behind, our staff worked with the RCMP just to see if an owner for some items could be identified so that the items could be stored, so those have been sorted out. Our staff have been through the park. There's no damage. They just want to get in and do the weeding and the cleaning, or not cleaning, but the tidying up, right? Because we have plantings in there and some garden beds, and we know just how diligent and the amazing work our park staff are. So when you see how tidy everything is, I can see that you just really want to get in there and do this other work. So that's really good news. As far as I know, and from what I have heard and checked in on, everything is going fine in the new location. They'll continue to evolve and we'll get updates accordingly. But I have not received anything further about it. So that's good news all around. On to other topics, though, a couple of updates. I shared on Facebook an event that I was at. Just the Sooke Nation had a celebratory event to honor and receive and acknowledge the federal funding grant that they received. It's the same funding stream that Scouts Canada and our district were both successful in the Infrastructure Canada ICIP. I'm sorry, I don't recall the acronym offhand, but anyway, it was that Infrastructure Canada, Investing in Canada Infrastructure Projects. Okay, but it was a private event, so it was just very last minute last Wednesday. There was only myself, Premier Horgan, Chief Planis and Elder Alphonse in attendance along with the Premier's staff, and then a few curious people came by. So that was just exciting to acknowledge that. The Sooke are contributing 1.2 million into the project, and around 4.8 of it is a federal share. And then Minister McKenna had wanted to attend the event but was unable to, so I read out a statement on her behalf at that particular event. So that was a very good news day, and it was just nice to be in the company of both the chief and our premier, of course. So other few updates, you may know that Victoria Transit along with BC Transit will be making masks mandatory on transit buses. They're recommended right now because we've heard that masks are recommended when physical distancing of 6 feet cannot be made possible. So as transit use picks up, that becomes increasingly more difficult. So I believe it's August the 20th that will come into effect, but you'll see that there's a media release. So they're gearing up for that right now. And I do have a Transit Commission meeting tomorrow morning, but this decision has been made through the, it's staff have a certain amount of delegated authority to make these decisions. The Philharmonic Fling, which normally we celebrate and enjoy in Ed McGregor Park, did shift to a virtual format this year. So this was held on a private property, very private event, and in a virtual form, and I was fortunate to attend and give some remarks on behalf of council. I shared that we're very proud of our Philharmonic. We're very pleased to be able to sponsor the talent that we have, and I just couldn't imagine a world without music. So they didn't, of course, bring in the whole Philharmonic. There was a very select group of musicians that are already within their own circles or their own bubbles that played. It was outdoor, very minimal guests seated, and then they recorded. And it was just lovely, and I'm just very proud that we have our Philharmonic. I sort of joke that Sooke goes from Stanfields to Tuxedo faster than Superman. I mean, are surprisingly sophisticated with our rugged good looks, and I could go on, but it's always amazing. The talent that comes out of our Philharmonic is just exceptional. So it was lovely that they have found a way to continue this year. And of course, the musicians were very pleased to actually have a live, even though a live masked crowd in front of them, it was still a live audience, which is something. And then other than that, I'll share with you that I've been invited to be a speaker with United Nations Habitat, and it's the COVID impact on small towns and cities. So there's some preliminary work that I've done sort of June, July, and then I'm a confirmed speaker. So just sort of looking at it, it'll all be on Zoom. It would be in Collingwood, which is much larger than us by comparison. But when you look at Canada-wide, even FCM classifies communities of 100,000 or less as rural, right? So it just... Yeah, so when I sit in on the rural forum, and then it's interesting when you talk about the different sizes, but while we have our rural nature to us here in our community, in some ways we have things like broadband, we have piped water, we have transit systems. While they all could use improvement, these exist in our communities, whereas in other places they do not. And so this is where, as I've had conversations about UBCM and being virtual, and then there's been some talk about what that looks like and the capacity, is just a reminder that in some places there are still dial-up, right? There is no Wi-Fi, broadband to everybody. In some places, Zoom is difficult. They need to call in because it takes up too much broadband time, and this continues to be a challenge. So. But yes, I'm excited about that, and UBCM staff are supporting with my presentation there, and because it'll be a general sort of local government perspective with some made in Sooke examples, as I always like to share and brag about. But one of them that I will raise, and I've talked about, and I have to remember who my audience is when I talk about our advocacy for cannabis revenue, is just reminding this is an international audience, and cannabis is indeed legal here in Canada, and I didn't do that the last time, and I was watching some of the expressions on the Zoom screen, and then I'm like, why are they Right, okay, because it's not necessarily legal in all parts of the world, although, so there was just some learning that comes from that, but just the new revenue that's made available and how I do feel that local government and our share of the 25% would make an impact, particularly in small towns as we support many community groups. So more on that to come, but that'll be on September 2nd, I believe, so it'll be giving you an update after this occurs. And then I have a CRD board meeting this Wednesday, so this will be our last CRD meeting, and then we'll recess until the September schedule picks up again. And other than that, I'm very excited that for those of you that subscribe to the Compass newsletter, in the coming weeks, you'll start to receive more and more information and updates on the UBCM convention program. But I'm very excited about it. I know it's a virtual format, but the intent is to make it as awesome as it can be, given that it's a virtual format. There's only, you do the most that you can, but very dynamic, very relevant program that we're putting together, and it's all coming together quite nicely. Quite proud of it, actually. So that will be it. Until next time. Oh, no, they did, I spoke last because they didn't have any updates. Yes. So on that note, we'll move to item 14, which is release of closed meeting resolutions. So this is the Sooke Program of the Arts Committee appointments that were made in camera on July 27th. And what council has indeed resolved is that council appoint Linda Gordon as the Sooke Community Arts Council representative to the SPA committee, and that council appoint Montana Stanley as the Sooke Region Historical Society representative to the SPA committee, and that council reappoint Lorraine Polivsky-Love, Peter Jonassen, and Gregory Verano as community members of the SPA committee, and that council appoint the following as community members of the SPA committee: Susan Percival, Lori Kirk, and J.P. Elson. And that council amend the terms of reference of the Sooke Program of the Arts Committee to include 6 community members. So that was done. And on that note, I will look to council to adjourn the open session and reconvene the in-camera portion. Moved by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Any items, anything on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.